This morning is going to be just a little bit different. Most of the time I find a passage, I like to hang out in that passage, figure out what's going on. A number of years ago, I heard a man named Louis Giglio. He's a preacher down from Atlanta. He likes to use different scientific things along with the Bible to come up with, so he's kind of helped me with what we'll be talking about this morning. Before we get there, though, they're two friends. They've both been lifelong baseball fans, like dedicated fans. And so they tell each other, okay, whoever dies first, you have to come back and tell the other one if there's any baseball in heaven. So the years go by. Finally, one of them passes away. One night, the one that's still alive falls asleep, and he hears a voice calling his name. His friend says, hey, I've got some good news and I got some bad news. He said, well, what is it? He said, there is definitely baseball in heaven. He said, all of our old mates are there. We're all young. The weather's always perfect. He said, well, what in the world could be the bad news? He said, you're scheduled to pitch tomorrow. In 1968, this picture was taken by the astronauts from Apollo 8, Frank Borman, Jim Lovell, and Bill Anders. This picture is called Earthrise. And I've taken the moon part out of this shot just because the Earth here is so beautiful. Apollo 8 was they were the first humans to orbit the moon. The moon is 238,000 miles from the Earth. And all of the Apollo missions captured the attention of people worldwide, and it began to show people that our universe was a lot bigger than what we thought it was. Now, we knew that in principle, but for them to see something like the Earth from so far away, that was very unique to people. When Apollo 8 went around the moon on Christmas Eve in 1968, it was watched by millions and millions of people. And one of the things they did that made it so incredible was they put a whole new perspective to it. When as the people watched, they began to read, in the beginning, God created the heaven and the earth. And the earth was without form and void, and darkness was upon the face of the deep. And the Spirit of God moved upon the face of the waters. And God said, let there be light. And there was light. Now light travels 186,000 miles per second. 188,000 miles per second. So in a year's time, light travels 5.88 trillion miles. Keep that in mind. We're going to come back to that. When we look at the existence of the universe, there's only three possibilities on how it came to be. The first one says it's always been there. The second said it was created by accident or it created itself. And the third one is that it was created. The first one is rejected by every form of science. The universe is still expanding, meaning it had a starting point. It was created, or if you look at the second one, it accidentally came into being at a specific point. And yet the second one that says that it came in by itself or by accident is scientifically impossible. That would be like getting a bunch of carpet, nails, screws, windows, chairs, curtains, paint, screens, projectors, computers, podiums, grabbing all of that together, throwing it into the corner in the church building landing just as it is today. That's as likely to happen as the universe just, boom, creating itself. Now, the main and really only viable option is that it had a creator. And David writes in Psalm 19:1, the heavens declare the glory of God, and the firmament shows his handiwork. The universe itself is the proof that God exists and that he was the creator. So this morning we're going to look at three stars. The first one we know well. Scientifically, it's called Sol. We call it the sun. It's 93 million miles from the Earth. So light, traveling at 186,000 miles per second, takes 8 minutes to reach the Earth. It starts the sun, takes 8 minutes before it gets here. You could fit over 1 million Earths inside the sun. So if the Earth was the diameter of this ping pong ball, the sun would be 15 feet in diameter. I knew nobody would be impressed by that. So I took some tape and I marked out 15 feet. Here's the Earth, right in the middle of it. That's the sun. That's how big the sun is compared to the Earth. And somewhere on this Earth is you. Little teeny tiny you sitting right here. And look at the sun, how big that is. If you took all the ping pong ball sized Earth that would fit in the sun, you could fill an entire school bus till they were pouring out the windows. That's how many Earths could go into the sun. And somewhere on that Earth is where we are, on one of those ping pong balls. That's how much bigger the universe is than we are. David says in Psalm 33, 6 through 9, by the word of the Lord the heavens were made, and by his breath of his mouth all their hosts. He gathers the waters of the sea together as a heap. He lays up the deeps in storehouses. Let all the earth fear the Lord. Let all the inhabitants of the world stand in awe of him. For he spoke, and it was done. He commanded, and it stood fast. Not only did he create it, he didn't have to work for it. He said, you're going to be there, and it was there. Our God is bigger than that 15-foot sun, or by that 93 million mile one that's away. God is bigger. And our sun is one of billions in our galaxy alone. Not in the universe, just in our galaxy. The second star comes from the Orion constellation, the Hunter. The scientific name is Alpha Orionis. We just call it Betelgeuse. Betelgeuse is a red supergiant star. It emits about 100,000 more times of energy than our own sun does. Here's a little bit better view of that. Betelgeuse is 700 light years away. The light year is 5.8 trillion miles. So 700 times 5.8 trillion means it is 4 quadrillion miles away from the Earth. That would take you a minute to get there. That means if the Earth was the size of this ping pong ball, and you drove all the way to New York City, and you got to the very bottom of the Empire State Building and laid that on the ground, the Empire State Building, and then 5 more would equal what the Earth is. That's about 1.65 miles in diameter compared to this little bitty Earth where we sit. That's how big it is. Betelgeuse is twice the size, not of the sun, but of the Earth's orbit around the sun. That's how much bigger it is than the sun, much less of the Earth. You could fit 262 trillion Earths. And remember, you're on one of those. 262 trillion Earths could go into Betelgeuse. That is enough ping pong balls to fill the Superdome in New Orleans all the way to the brim 3,000 times. That's how much bigger that star is. And here we are, somewhere on our little planet. God is bigger. And what makes that better is he breathed those out. That's what David wrote. God breathed and the stars came. How great is our God? Does this not change how you view God? Have you ever prayed to God and you're advising him or counseling or making suggestions on how he should handle this situation? Makes you rethink that a little bit, doesn't it? The God that can make all this is not going to take advice from Roy Hawkins. I have nothing of the wisdom that he has. And it's way beyond our ability to comprehend. And God is bigger even than that. The next star is called Scuti. I love that name. It's part of the constellation Scutum. It is a red hypergiant star. It emits 340,000 times more energy than our sun. It is 9,500 light years away from the Earth. 9,500 times 5.88 trillion means it's 55 quadrillion, 860 trillion miles from the Earth. If the Earth is this ping pong ball, Scuti would be the height of Mount Everest, over 6 miles in diameter. And here we are. God is bigger. To really understand, it's easy to hear the numbers, but until you really see them, we don't really understand how big we're talking. Quick math lesson: a billion equals 1,000 million. A trillion equals 1,000 billion. A quadrillion equals 1,000 trillion. So a million seconds, 12 days ago. A billion seconds, we go back to 1994. A trillion seconds, 30,000 BC. And a quadrillion second is 31 million years ago. So just think about how big the numbers that we're talking. 7 quadrillion Earths would fit inside Scuti. 7 quadrillion. And on one of those, here we are. How great is our God? With that many ping pong balls, you could cover the state of Texas, 269,000 square feet or square miles, 22 inches deep with ping pong balls. The entire state. 7 quadrillion. Here's a good example. Remember, a million Earths, so here we have our Earth, can fit into the sun, right? That much, that's pretty easy to understand. So here we are with Scuti. The sun is in this picture, but you got to look close because it only takes 1 pixel. If I made this image any smaller so you could see more of Scuti, you would not be able to see the sun at all, because in this picture it takes 1 pixel. And remember, a million Earths would fit inside that pixel, not counting. And God is bigger than that. He created it by saying it. He spoke it into being. Here's a little bit better view of what we'd look like. If I took the finest point pen in the world and tried to put a point next to that sun, it would still be too big. That's how much bigger. And so when David writes, the heavens declare the glory of God, and the firmament shows his handiwork, God is bigger. This picture was taken by the Hubble telescope, the Hubble Ultra Deep Field. Between 2003 and 2009, the Hubble took pictures in ultraviolet and infrared modes. So it helped them be able to see where the light was coming from. Visible in this one picture, aimed at one section of the galaxy, or aimed at one section of the universe, are 10,000 galaxies. There are 10,000 galaxies in this picture. The Milky Way galaxy, which we are in, has around 400 billion stars in it. The closest galaxy to us, the Andromeda galaxy, has around 1 billion stars in it. So based on that, if we took 10,000 galaxies and assumed that each of those galaxies has an average of 500 billion stars, we end up with around 5 quadrillion stars. But imagine that each star has 5 planets. We have 8 or 9, depending on if you're old school or new school. So if you were to take that 5 quadrillion and multiply it by 5, you'd have 25 quadrillion planets in one section of the universe. We can't fathom how great that is. Somewhere just in this picture are 25 quadrillion planets just like this one. Maybe it doesn't look like it, but a planet. But God paid special attention to this one. Why? It says in Genesis 15:5, the Lord took Abraham outside and said, now look toward the heavens and count the stars, if you are able to count them. The Lord knew one day we would have a better ability to count the stars. But as Abraham looked at them, said the Lord said to him, so shall your descendants be. In one small section of the universe, over 5 quadrillion stars. God knew there was going to be a lot of us. When he said, be fruitful and multiply, he meant that. But he also allowed us to be fearfully and wonderfully made. He also loved us enough that all of that didn't matter to him, that even himself didn't matter to him. He was willing to sacrifice that for you, personally. But it gets even better than that. This is the Whirlpool Galaxy. It is 24 million light years away from the Earth. If a light year is 5.88 trillion, multiplied by 24 million, it is 120 quadrillion miles from the Earth. This galaxy contains 300 billion stars, and at the very center of this galaxy is a black hole. And the black hole is what provides it's what holds that rotation together that you see in that picture. They took the Hubble telescope and they zoomed right into the center of this galaxy. And this picture, which comes directly off of NASA's Hubble site, looks like this. That's what they found at the very heart. Something that was 141 quintillion miles away from the Earth. And here we are, somewhere on here, floating out in this galaxy that is way bigger than we've ever thought about. And yet, the world and sin want to shrink God down. They want to make God a genie in a bottle that it answers whenever I need something, right? When I don't have what I want, then I pray. The man that made this, to breathe this out, the very God that runs all of it, we want it to use him as a servant. But when you consider the universe and everything that God controls, and to realize God is bigger than that. And that's how we must approach him. that he is that great. Daniel wrote in Daniel chapter 4, verse 35, all the inhabitants of the earth are of no account. But he does according to his will among the army of heaven and among the inhabitants of the earth, and no one can fend off his hand or say to him, what have you done? None of us can question God. What he's made, what he's done, what he's going to do. Job and his buddies tried to question God a little bit. I love this chapter 38 in Job, because God speaks to him and he says, can you bind the beautiful Pleiades? Can you loose the cords of Orion? Can you bring the constellations in their season or lead out the bear with its cubs? Do you know the laws of the heavens? Pretty amazing. We barely know the laws of earth. We don't know everything that exists out there, especially given how big it is. So let us not forget Psalm 19:1. The heavens declare the glory of God, and the firmament shows his handiwork. This morning I wanted to go in that direction so that we don't forget how big and how great God is. Because sometimes we underestimate him, or we forget him, or we put him on the back shelf until we need him. He's got to be front and center all the time. The same God that made that universe also made you. There's some pretty amazing things that's going on in your bodies every single day from the time you were conceived that are simply, we have no answers for it. Just a baby's eyes when they're made. There's a million different cells that are going to work, but they have to find a partner. A million cells have to find a perfect partner to make a baby's eyes. And as those eyes are being made, there's skin over those eyes. But in some point, this little pincer-looking thing comes and makes eyelids. And that's all it does. That's its whole job. And that's just for a pair of eyes. When we look at what science tells us, and we know what God is and what he has done, that should really make us understand how small we are. So don't forget how small we are compared to how truly great he is, not just here with us, but in this whole universe. As great as he is, he still loves you. He still makes time for you. He's still waiting to hear from you. He would want nothing more than for you to call on him each and every day. So I hope this week as we go about, we just remember how incredible God is and everything that he's done for us. So if this morning there is anyone who needs to reevaluate your relationship with God, we have the time to do so now. May the Lord bless you and keep you. May the Lord make his face to shine upon you and be gracious to you. May the Lord lift his countenance upon you and give you peace. Let's all stand and sing.